Because that Betsy DeVos speech has just wrapped up. Plus, you and I have been meaning to talk about James Comey now ever since the news broke yesterday. I knew
Yes.
that Ron and I were going to be sitting up here with you viewers at home talking about this breaking news, James Comey getting fired by President Trump yesterday. It has been all we've talked about, honestly, since news broke at around 2:45 Arizona time yesterday.
It took a Betsy DeVos to interrupt our coverage of what's been going on in Washington.
I know, it's been crazy, Ron.
And I actually think there's so many different angles to this story, but part of why it's so talked about and it was so stunning is that no one even knew, except for obviously about 3 or 4 people, that it was even in the works.
Right, so
I
there's
didn't see that
so
coming.
many articles about how they kept it to just their very close inner circle.
Right.
They didn't let anyone know. And I mean, obviously that was smart on their part if they didn't want the information leaked, because typically we in the media end up hearing things before announcements typically are made.
Right.
And this one I think caught everyone off guard, including James Comey. Now, viewers, I don't know if you've heard about how James Comey found out that he was fired. He wasn't told by President Trump. He wasn't told by someone in Trump's administration. No, he was speaking at an FBI event in LA, and it appeared on the TV screens behind him. Comey thought he was being pranked, laughed it off, said it was a pretty good prank, and then some members of his team whispered in his ear to come step aside, and that's how Comey found out that he was fired by President Trump. Pretty crazy.
You know, you can't cover the news in L.A. without a helicopter. I mean, we saw that yesterday with the dog chasing the bear. But they get the helicopters up, and before you know it, they're flying over the motorcade of Comey, driving down the freeway and working its way to the airport. And then, you know, he's an extremely tall fellow, 6 foot 8 inches tall.
6'8"?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Are you really?
Yes. Try to find some video of him walking around. There's that piece of video where Trump kind of welcomes him to the Oval Office in his first couple of days.
You are right. He is 6'8".
Yeah, and I mean, Donald Trump's no
That's
slouch.
taller than Michael Jordan. Can I just make note of that?
Yeah. If you actually see the video of him occasionally like walking down the hall with aides or whatever, I mean, he literally looks like a center on a basketball team. I did not realize he was that tall. But nevertheless, the fact that they were able to keep it to such a close circle and then apparently alert a handful of people beyond the decision-making process, which sounds to me like it was Rod Rosenstein, who no one knew until 24 hours ago, right?
Well, no one in the mainstream,
Correct.
regular, your average person.
I mean, if you did a poll
know
of Americans, like 2% would know.
He's the Deputy Attorney General. Basically, if Jeff Sessions was out for any reason, Rod Rosenstein, he steps in.
I was going to give him 3%, but I'm only giving him 2%. But for the first time in his professional career, they had a media stakeout in front of his house this morning. We actually...
Yeah, you're right. For the first time in his life.
Yes. We actually had video of Rosenstein getting in his SUV and heading to work. But the fact that it was kept to basically the decision-making team, I'll bet you, of Trump, Rosenstein, Sessions, probably 2 or 3 advisors within the White House. You know, I mean, it's still at this point unclear. Bannon, where does he sit in the circle of trust?
It's all...
Ivanka, Jared, are they still as tightly in the circle of trust? I mean, did he bounce it off of them, kind of a thing? Things we don't know, but someday we will learn all about. I mean, I am always fascinated by the backstory of how these things unfold.
Right, and that's something that at this point, not even 24 hours later, we haven't quite heard.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
But it could be something that is slowly revealed. Now, let's talk about the letters that were issued, the recommendations that were issued to President Trump, and the reason why the Trump administration cited for firing Comey. Now, they are saying that they fired the FBI director because of how he handled the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Obviously, many people out there on the internet, both critics and journalists, are kind of finding this strange, considering previous comments that President Trump had made, especially on Twitter, regarding the treatment of Hillary Clinton and the email investigation. However, in this scenario, the firing of James Comey, they are attributing it to the fact that James Comey decided in July 2016 to hold this press conference, and then 10 days before decided to make another note of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And then when he was questioned at a congressional hearing last week, he said that he didn't regret any of the way he handled it.
Right.
And he said that he felt he needed to speak out because otherwise he would have felt like he was concealing information.
Yes.
And
which the concealing of information was actually part of the Rosenstein memo.
Right.
He said...
It's 3 pages long.
Correct. So you've read it as well.
Oh, we read it here online, on air yesterday.
Sami actually read it to you guys?
I did read it to
How
them.
is that for personalized, customized online service?
Too bad I couldn't speak in his voice, though. It was still my voice.
Yes, right. Well, sure. But, I mean, he basically addressed that part of it, saying... And as we step back now, just take one step back, and we'll see how long it takes for this to continue to be a huge issue, because one thing with the Trump presidency is just when you think you've settled in and the big issue is going to be repeal and replace, or the big issue, right?
Yeah, what happened? What
happened to
healthcare?
repeal and replace?
What is healthcare now?
You know, and you think this is going to be the biggest issue over the course of his presidency, you can almost be sure that there will be something else within a week or two, right? Or shorter, a shorter period than that.
It is still so shocking to me, though.
Correct.
This is just...
you know, it's what it's prompted me to do is take one step back and just look at Comey and try to see it from, as we're trained to do in this business, to try to see it from every angle. And I think that he wanted throughout the course of this process, which couldn't help but be a huge part of the political arena when the investigation of Hillary Clinton's happening as the countdown's coming closer and closer to the election. I think that he truly, legitimately wanted to protect the Bureau in all ways, and perhaps even more important than that, protect his own reputation, which has been solid as can be over his many years of service in Washington. But
be better.
I think that he second-guessed himself, Samia, every single time he made a decision.
And schools, the vandalism of Jewish cemeteries.
And so he came out in July and held that much talked about news conference where the quote was, "Despite everything I've just told you about all of the mistakes that were made and what could be viewed as potential criminal activity," he didn't say that. I mean, he's inappropriate, improper. I mean, every word you could use except a crime.
Right.
He said, no reasonable prosecutor, it is our judgment that no reasonable prosecutor would move forward with a prosecution in this case. That was not a good way to put it, because you knew that within a day, all types of either current prosecutors or retired prosecutors would come out and say, I'm reasonable, I had a career in this field, I see multiple ways in which you could have moved forward. So the no reasonable prosecutor using that as the judgment might not have been the best way to go. And anyway, the pushback to it, I think, you do your job in Washington, and even if you're a high-profile person, you're still an everyday, regular person, and I think that you can get yourself shocked in the age of social media at the reaction to every decision you make. I mean, we are told from some sources that even the president now is surprised at the blowback in the last 18 hours since this
this was huge. The minute the news came out, Comey shot up to the #1 trend on Twitter.
Sure.
And it's just... It is one of those surprising things. Typically, when we see Comey trending, it's because he's testified on Capitol Hill about something.
Right. Yeah.
Or it was during the announcement of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. I don't think a lot of people, when they saw Comey trending, expected to find out that he was fired yesterday.
Right.
It seemed to come out of nowhere, considering, you know, in just the last few days, last few weeks, you know, he'd been making a number of public appearances. He had been speaking on Capitol Hill. He was in LA yesterday for a recruitment event. I mean, everything was seemingly normal for him.
You know, I'll tell you how I found out about it. I'd been off my phone for a couple of hours, hadn't checked in with you guys, just fired the phone up and looked at Instagram, and I saw a picture of the letter on Brett Baer's Instagram page. And for a second there, I thought it was either I knew it couldn't have been a joke, but I thought it might have been something that had been leaked that wasn't true, or a draft document, or whatever. Because as I started our commentary, I think a huge part of this story is the fact that it was done in such a shocking, unanticipated manner.
Right. I mean, again, Comey found out he was fired not from his boss.
Yeah.
Not from anyone working for his boss, but from the media.
Right.
I mean, suddenly the news broke, and we have all these TV screens here in the newsroom. We have all the cable news networks and local channels, and suddenly you just saw Comey fired, like all across the board.
Course,
and it was... It went from what seemed like one of the slowest news days in recent days to the most chaotic news day I've had, at least in a few weeks.
Yeah. So the decision gets made, and they are able to prove, at least for one time in Washington, that you can do something without a leak. As big as this was, the fact that, and as much press and media as there are in Washington, the fact that nobody even picked up a hint that this was on the verge of happening is actually quite amazing. Now, there's a report out there today that, and there are multiple, lots of different angles to it.
Right.
Everything from Trump was upset that Comey was wanting more funding for the Russian investigation, to some other things that I've heard. But one of the reports that is out there is that the president was really frustrated that more was not being done to investigate the leaks that were happening, as every angle on this story continued to unfold.
Right. I mean...
So, all of that.
There's so many different things, Ron. I mean, there's so many
correct.
things I want to ask you about. One of the things that a lot of people pointed out was President Trump's letter to Comey. A lot of people finding the second paragraph peculiar. The fact that President Trump went out of his way to write in the letter that although you've informed me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation.
Correct.
A lot of people finding that part of the letter interesting, at least
yes.
according to the people on Twitter.
Right,
the
sure.
journalists on Twitter,
right.
the random, Twitter users that are active on there.
Right.
They were pointing that out a lot. Obviously, there have been different people making comparisons to Watergate.
Of course.
I mean, there's a lot of chatter online. Obviously, there are people that are online in support of this decision. A lot of people, especially Trump supporters, saying, why are the Democrats upset? They were complaining about Comey for months. Isn't this what you wanted? So...
I heard an interview this morning.
All sorts of reactions.
I heard an interview this morning, taped, obviously, from a few months ago, where Harry Reid, when he was still in power and the leading voice of the Democrats on Capitol Hill, said, he's got to go. He's got to go. And this is why I call him the new J. Edgar Hoover, the sort of infamous name of the man who ran roughshod over, and turned it into his own personal fiefdom, basically, the FBI. But just as a little bit of perspective, believe it or not, Samia, I remember where I was and what I was doing. This is to this level. Where I was and what I was doing when I heard that Richard Nixon had done the Saturday Night Massacre, right, with the firing of multiple people who were the special prosecutor and everybody else who was involved in investigating him in Watergate.
Right.
And on a Saturday, he fires him, and they called it the Saturday Night Massacre. That was more than 40 years ago, and I remember where I was and what I was doing. I offer that as perspective to everybody who's watching us right now, that this is how big this is.
This could be that moment.
You could remember where you were and what you were doing when you heard that the FBI director had been fired by the president.
Which...
40 years from now. It's possible,
and
Samia.
I'm glad you brought up Nixon, because there is this tweet circulating all over the internet. I don't know if you've seen it. It's been retweeted tens of thousands of times at this point. But it's from the Nixon library.
Oh.
And it's something to the effect of, even Nixon didn't fire the FBI director.
Yeah.
From the official library account.
That came from the library account?
Yeah,
That's
the official
interesting.
account. It wasn't some parody account. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Well, while you're looking at that, let's just go through some of the points on the Rosenstein email so that, people, obviously a letter from the president's going to get a lot more play than a memo from anybody else. But
there it is.
The fact that
support providing appropriate assistance to the armed forces of Ukraine and greater coordination.
They build it as,
NATO
quote,
defense plan.
fun fact. That is
again,
hilarious.
Look at that. It's
with
from
me
the
for about another
Richard
6.5
Nixon
years?
Library. It has a blue check mark. It's the official. Yeah.
Here's a fun fact.
Just wanted to share that with you.
Well, all of official Washington is in meltdown mode.
I know. It's been, I mean, if you look at the.
Right.
Let's just show you the number of retweets and everything.
Yeah.
Look at that.
46,000.
No, 46,000, 47,000 likes. It's been retweeted almost 35,000 times now. It's that tweet that, of all the tweets that I saw yesterday, I guess this one was amusing.
Yeah. Well, that is actually hilarious. A little bit of perspective when when it seems like, oh, this is the most important story in the history of mankind, which you see the media reaction to it and you feel like it for, 48 hours till something else comes up. The fact that they put it out there as, hey, everybody, here's a fun fact, cracks me up. It's kind of like when Chuck Grassley, who runs the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, gave his interview on Fox this morning, and he said, what's my reaction to everybody who's freaking out about this? Suck it up and move on.
Well, but it's interesting Grassley made that comment on Fox News because just moments later they held a hearing. The Senate Judiciary Committee had a confirmation hearing for some different members of the Department of Justice.
Solicitor General.
And Dianne Feinstein took it upon herself to use that time to talk about what happened. She also thanked Senator Grassley for allowing her to do so, but she was given time to address her concerns about the firing of James Comey.
Yeah. And so, that's not a surprise. That was actually part of what I was going to mention to you was who entered the circle of trust before the story broke. Because so we had President Trump, Rod Rosenstein, and the Attorney General himself, Jeff Sessions.
Right.
We know those three for sure. There had to be a handful within the White House. The president wouldn't make a move like this.
Vice President Pence?
Yes, I believe so. In fact, I'm sure so because of what I'm about to tell you, which is then he calls Chuck Schumer. And so you would have to presume that he probably also called 2 or 3 other
Paul
leading...
Ryan? Do you think he
quite
called
possibly,
the Speaker of
but
the
I do
House?
think since the Senate has advise and consent, and the Senate has to now make a decision on his replacement, which will be unbelievable. That'll be so highly contentious. Because a number of Democrats did not vote for Neil Gorsuch because they didn't like the treatment that Merrick Garland got.
Right.
So you could see a number of people, even if the president picks one of the most qualified people in our history to lead the FBI, you could see a number of Democrats vote against him because they don't think that Comey had been treated fairly.
And at this point, the FBI director would need 60 votes, correct?
Correct. But they already went nuclear on the Supreme Court, so probably, in all practical purposes, probably not. So there's that. But I mean, you have a number of Republicans who are not being supportive of what the president did. So
many calling for an independent investigation into the Russia probe, including, of course, our senator from right here in Arizona, Senator McCain, Jeff Flake's tweet as well. Senator Jeff Flake from here in Arizona, tweeting yesterday. That tweet being retweeted thousands of times as well. I'm going to pull that one up. You read that one?
Yes, right. We read it on the air this morning, but just him saying, I've thought about this for the last several hours, trying to come up with a good rationale
and I just can't.
For, to do this, and I can't do it. So, 45,000
there's that
likes and 18,000 retweets. I'm getting a lot of action on my poll question this morning, which is as basic as you can ask, which is did James Comey deserve to be fired or not? And, I put it out there, and you get a, there are days over 24 hours I'll have 235 votes.
Right. So if viewers want to vote in that, they can go over to Ron's Twitter page and vote in that.
Right now, by the way, leading, didn't mean to cut you off there, SK, but right now leading is, yes, it was overdue. In second place is, no, he didn't deserve it. And then in third place is the whole timing argument.
Right. Why was it now?
Yeah.
Which is the argument that a lot of Democratic leaders are making because they were done with Comey. They were over him following, the whole Hillary Clinton email investigation. But I think, months later they had come to accept that, okay, Comey still has his job, let's move on. So they find it kind of surprising that why now all of a sudden, which is why a lot of people out there are speculating that it had to do with the Russia investigation.
But can you really help me to believe that the president is surprised by the blowback here? That he thought, the Democrats crying Chuck Schumer, as he calls him.
I did find that tweet interesting. I mean, I thought it was interesting only because, it sounds like a very typical @real Donald Trump tweet.
Yes, right.
But that tweet was also sent from the official POTUS account.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The POTUS account typically sends tweets that sound very presidential, sound very official, sound very formulaic, very official language. So I was very surprised to see it written from the POTUS account. It wasn't just that @real Donald Trump tweeted it and then POTUS retweeted @real Donald Trump's tweet, but it was actually tweeted from both accounts.
Well, let's just put it like this. I think that a lot of people, the shockwaves of Donald Trump's presidency in that first week with all the executive orders and everything else, and just the fact that he had won, were rippled across the country. And I do have a sense that in passing weeks, in the recent multiple weeks, there was a sort of a sense that he's kind of settled into the job. Especially when he's meeting with world leaders and dealing with more of the international affairs and actually apparently building some pretty good relationships with the leader of China, for an example, and some of the Middle Eastern leaders, etc. And it looked like, hey, he's really kind of finding his footing here. And he insists that time will prove him right on this decision. However, I don't think that one part of the president, that one part of Donald Trump, is going to go away. No matter how presidential he might appear or become. And he said that during the campaign. He said, "You just wait how presidential I can be." He actually promised it. But I don't.
But not when it comes to Twitter.
Correct. I don't think that part of him that some would consider kind of like. Like teenage boys kidding each other, right? Making up names and whatever. The locker room talk or whatever. The part of Donald Trump that likes to call names, even if it's done in a somewhat tongue-in-cheek manner, that allows him to go onto Twitter and get instant feedback. Sure, there are going to be plenty of people who will get right on and at him with "I hate you" and "I hate everything you're doing," but he still gets that instant feedback, which by all accounts, what we've heard from people in the White House is he loves it, he needs it. That's why they schedule him to go out and do some of these appearances. When Washington gets to be too much of a slog, they'll send him out to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or wherever, so that he can feed off the love from the crowd. So I think he needs that social media interaction, and I don't think that part of him's going away, no matter how presidential he might otherwise be.
Right, and he gets more of a reaction, more interactions, more retweets, more just social media attention when his tweets obviously are more Trump-like and less presidential. If it was, a very official statement, we might not be talking about it today.
I think you're right.
So he knows what he's doing.
Yep. I feel as though I got a little extra time with you today.
I know you did. We have obviously the White House press briefing that everyone is waiting for. This is highly anticipated.
You think there'll be good ratings on this one?
Oh, this is going to be huge. I do have to say to many of our viewers that love to watch Sean Spicer that unfortunately Sean Spicer will not be doing the press briefing today. It will be Sarah Huckabee Sanders once again. She'll be doing the press briefing, and this one's going to be a tough one. You know that the press is ready with their questions regarding the firing of Comey, the Russia investigation. I mean, you have the Russian foreign minister visiting the White House the day after after Comey was fired. So I feel like this is going to be a very tense White House briefing.
Before I say goodbye, Samia.
Yes. You're leaving me? What?
Well, I think I have to because this meeting's been going this meeting's been going on for a while. Did you see this picture I put up on social not too long ago? Oh, sorry, here it is. This is right outside our studios. For those of you who are watching us in, because we have a lot of people in other countries, other parts of the USA, etc. Isn't that beautiful? A rainy day in Phoenix, Arizona. And that's from my Instagram page. And 7,985 followers.
Wow.
So, if you want to follow me on Instagram, somebody is about to become my 8,000
Are you using your News Now
follower.
time to
Yes.
promote yourself?
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be talking about Comey? How does that photo affect our Comey discussion?
I suppose
Somehow tie that to Comey
Okay.
and it'll be allowed. Wrong.
Maybe I'll run a poll question. Do you want to see a picture of Comey on my Instagram page?
All right. Good job tying that together. All right. Looks like more people are entering the press briefing room.
Oh, perfect
There
timing.
she is.
Here she comes. Wow, is this going to be fun to